As he looked into his dark eyes, a feeling of foreboding seemed to reflect a warning back to him through the mirror. "Just be careful," he cautioned him. Chapter 5. A frail voice had called after him. Evan opened his eyes and turned his head in the direction of the continual bleeping. Instinctively, his hand reached out towards the 4 red blurs and pressed the snooze button. The instant that his consciousness became aware of the fact that he was awake, the encounter with the stranger from the pub climbed out of the box of discarded contemplation, scampered along the corridors of Evan's mind, and called upon his reason, seeking out an explanation as to the early events and the identity of the unfamiliar eccentric. I wonder what it was that was so important that guy was willing to walk through a wall just to talk to you about, his probing mind asked, which had not been sleeping for the 2 hours which Evan's physical being had been asleep for. His restless mind was more concerned with the topic of the ambush conversation which Evan's accomplice had put an end to before it had even begun, rather than the perplexing physics which had taken place. "I wonder if I came home from the pub, went to bed, and then dreamed all of those outlandish events. That explains everything," he negotiated with his reason, as the only way to shed some sort of understanding on the vagueness which was plaguing his mind. His mind was crushed that Evan had found a way to shut it up. But he understood that Evan needed to concentrate on what was happening tonight, or he could mess things up. Then where would he be? All too well, Evan's mind knew the answer to that question, and so, with deliberate effort, he pushed the disruptive question as far to the back of his awareness as he could manage. That way, Evan could tighten his focus on the job in hand, namely, the break-in at the warehouse. Stealing from premises that could afford a loss or could make a claim from their insurance company was something that Evan's integrity would allow to go unchallenged, whereas breaking into a person's house, even a manor house, was something that he was opposed to. Of course, there was always a first time to make an exception to any rule. It all depends on how desperate a person is at any given moment, as was the case on that occasion last year. He had broken into an old man's home, a widower, as it materialised afterwards in the local newspaper. Evan closed his eyes and thought about the time when he had burgled a small terraced house and ended up with only £30 in cash for his trouble. He remembered how, looking around at the time, he thought that the person living there probably needed the money more than he did. He had hung around in the living room, debating the morality of the situation which he had placed himself in, until self-preservation had given him a push in order to prompt him to get a move on. "Hurry up and make your mind up. Are you taking the money or not?" Self-preservation had asked him. "Quickly, before you make a noise and somebody starts coming down the stairs asking, 'Is anybody there?' And if it's quicker down the stairs than you are at getting out of the kitchen window, God help the both of you." He took the money regardless. He tried to console himself with the idea that he would somehow get the money back to the victim when he was better off. It was his way of temporarily easing his conscience. He hoped he was not lying to himself. For days and days the guilt had followed him around, poking him in his back and calling him a bum. After nearly a week of being tormented by the finger of shame and the voice of self-atonement, he put £30 in an envelope and repaid the dishonourable debt. Ironically, he almost got caught posting the money back through the door. He felt sure that an old hand had touched his as he pushed the money into the letterbox, and was certain that a frail voice had called after him as he hurried away along the pensioners' garden path. There were times when Evan felt as though he was wasting his life. Moreover, the commodity of time, which had run out far too soon, for the two ladies in his life. Evan found himself having profound thoughts more and more often as he encountered the unfairness of life, which prematurely stole the life of loved ones around him. He wondered why he lived the way he did, and he began to converse with the voice inside his head again, the self-justifying voice that he argued with when he was alone or when he was in company, but still felt very much alone. When I was younger, I always believed I would do something meaningful and achieve, well, maybe not greatness, but something worthwhile, he told his inner self. What I really needed when I was a young boy was a helping hand and some guidance from somebody who was busy neglecting his parental duties. He cursed his forsaken father. The alarm sounded again, dissolving Evans' could have, should have, and would have plans. It now showed 9 minutes past 6. He managed to walk to the bathroom without his mind pestering him again about the early stranger and the bizarre occurrences. After a wake-up face splash with cold water, Evan considered combing his dark hair, but taking into account the fact he was not really intending on seeing anyone other than his fellow thieves, he decided to merely run his fingers through it instead. As he looked into his dark eyes, a feeling of foreboding seemed to reflect a warning back to him through the mirror. "Just be careful," he cautioned him. He returned to his bedroom in order to get ready for work. His mind had now given up all hope of keeping his inquisitiveness bound and gagged, silenced in a box of discarded contemplation. All the time, his mind was flitting between the feelings of uneasiness and the earlier encounter with the stranger in the pub, who could somehow show up unannounced and then disappear back through the stone wall which he had, in some way, appeared through. "Shut up, you fool," he reprimanded his demanding mind, which decided to give itself a rest from all the chatter and the chaos. He decided on a thick, dark blue, short-sleeved baggy top with the word "Hustler" embroidered on the chest at the left-hand side. He pulled on some black jogging pants and a pair of black training shoes. All were clean, comfortable, and easy to work in. Time had moved on, and with only 15 minutes left before the agreed meeting with his fellow workers, Evans started making his way towards his garage. On his way out of the house, he paused for a moment to make a few adjustments to his living room. Quickly, he drew the curtains, turned on the light, and switched the television on, turning up the volume. "Wouldn't want anybody to rob me while I'm at work," he quipped to himself, and then he locked the door.